The game I'm reviewing today is Richard III, a block war game published by Columbia Games. The topic is the Wars of the Roses, a series of relatively short but very bloody conflicts that involve the houses of York and Lancaster in 15th century for the control of the throne of England. There are many interesting things to be said about this game, and I want to start saying them as soon as possible, so the introduction today is going to be short. This is the map for the game. It is printed on pretty sturdy cardboard, so with practice and might of will you may be able to lay it flat on the table without using plexiglass, which is what I did here. And as you can see at first glance, it just looks good. It is extremely nice and pleasant to look at. The map looks clean and nice and neat, and it's very simple to identify where everything is. However, as you can see, there's a lot going on, many different symbols, and you do have to know them well if you want to play the game effectively. In fact, you have to learn where these shields are. The shields indicate where you can place certain units on the map. In fact, units enter the map in the area of their own shield if that area is neutral or friendly. Also, blocks with a certain shield defend, and they have a bonus in defense when they're defending in the area containing that shield. The cities work similarly. They give you a bonus in the number of units you can stack in an area, but also they allow you to raise city levies there, and the city levy will get a defensive bonus defending there. The crowns will give a defensive bonus to some units defending there, not to all of them, so that, again, it can be tricky. So there are just so many things that you have to take into account. You can start playing the game, no problem, but before you really become good, you have to know the map like the back of your hand. Because your opponent may start keeping blocks in areas where you're planning to bring in powerful units and now you can't because that area is not neutral or friendly, and that is going to damage you, to slow you down a lot. Of course, you can do the same, but so you have to learn not only where all these shields are, like your own, but also where the shields of the end of the opponent are, where the opponent is going to bring in units. So there's a lot that you have to factor in. It's real fun, it's a great challenge, but it may take a while before you learn. The game is divided in 3 campaigns, and each campaign is divided in 7 turns. At the beginning of each campaign, the players will receive 7 cards each. They will play a card each turn to determine what they can do that turn, and once their hand is empty, then the campaign is over and you start the next one. There are 2 types of cards. Some cards are special action cards. They allow you to do one particularly powerful action, like in the Columbia games. Some of these actions are very good, some a little more situational, so it's not always easy to use them effectively. Then you have other cards, these ones with a number there, and the illustration is simply decorative. There are numbers there between 2 and 4, and that is the number of action points that that card gives you. Each of these action points can be spent to activate an area on the map and to move any and all of the units you have in that area. Also, each of these points can be spent to bring a new unit from your pool on the map following the placement restrictions that I mentioned before. In each campaign, one player will take the role of the king and the other player will be the pretender. At the beginning of the game, the Lancaster player using the red blocks will be the king, and the York player using the white blocks will be the pretender. The idea is that in each campaign, the pretender will attack the forces of the king, trying to eliminate as many nobles as possible from the king's side, and or to flip some of those units to his own side. And the king will do exactly the same, just to try to defend his throne. You play through 7 cards, 7 turns. At the end of that, which is the end of the campaign, you look at the blocks, at the nobles that are on the map, and also the occupation of London counts as 1 block, and the church blocks count as 1 noble. At that point, if the pretender has the majority of nobles on the map, he becomes the king, and the king becomes the pretender. Otherwise, the king is the king, it remains the king for the next campaign. So the role of the king and the pretender may or may not switch during the game, and that may happen several times. You repeat this process 3 times. At the end of the 3rd campaign, whoever is the king then is the winner of the game. Each player also has 5 blocks that have a crown symbol there. Those blocks represent the king and his heirs. So if you eliminate all 5 blocks with the crown from your enemy's side, then you also win the game, and that is instant death. Like it happens in other Columbia games, the map is divided in areas that have borders of different colors to indicate the different number of units that can cross that border in a turn. Here the amount is 4 for the yellow border, 3 for the blue border, and 2 for the red-brown border. Also, if you're crossing the border, then your units have to stop immediately, whereas if you are traveling across other borders, then you can move up to 2 areas. The combat system is very similar to the one that you find in many other Columbia block games. The blocks will attack following an order determined by the letters. All the A's will attack before the blocks that have B, all the B's before the C's, and the C's before the D's. And when there are blocks with the same letter, the A's of the defender attack before the A's of the attacker, the B's of the defender, then the B's of the attacker. When you attack, you roll a number of dice equal to the strength of the unit, which is represented by the number of pips there on the top side, and you need to roll that number or less to inflict a hit, the number by the letter. In this case, for example, this block would attack before this one, because it is an A versus a B, will roll 3 dice and deal a hit on a roll of 1 or 2. This unit is slower, attacks later, but rolls 4 dice and has 50% chances of inflicting a hit on each of those dice. So you're gonna have to do a lot of strategy when you decide what units you send against what other ones. So you're gonna use mainly strong and slow units, or weaker and fast, or situations in which either solution might be best, a combination of the two. Either way, there's gonna be a lot of strategy and it's gonna be a lot of fun trying to do that. That which I just explained is the standard combat system you find in many Columbia block games. Here, that system has a couple of twists that can really make things interesting. For example, in other Columbia block games, when you inflict damage on the other side, you split it among the units of the side. Not here. Here you inflict all the damage to the unit which has the highest strength at the beginning of the attack. For example, if this unit deals 3 points of damage to this side, then you cannot distribute it between these units. You have to inflict it all to this unit that has 3 points of strength at the beginning, because this one only has 2. But that's the point. This unit gets all of the 3 damages and goes down to 0, and it is completely eliminated. An interesting option open to senior heirs present in battle is the charge. When executing a charge, the senior heir does not have to necessarily attack the unit with the highest combat strength. In this case, it would be this one that has 3, this other one has 2, but can choose any unit in the enemy army. And this could be very important in many cases. Like in this case, for example, this senior heir has more interested in targeting this block here, because this block has a symbol of a rose. The blocks with a symbol of a rose, once you destroy them, they are out of the game forever. They cannot return. The other blocks, once you destroy them, they are unavailable for this campaign, but they can return at full strength from the pool of the owning player in the next campaign. So since you're trying to get rid of as many enemy nobles as possible, it's really good if you can attack as many of these as possible. On the downside, if the charge is not effective enough and the targeted block survives, then the target block gets a free attack, an immediate free attack against the charging unit. So that is the risk that you are facing. But that's not enough. You have even more options. The king has the option, instead of attacking, to force a treachery roll on enemy units that have a number here in the top left corner. In that case, the attacked unit will roll a number of dice equal to that number, which can be 1 or more. If all the numbers that are rolled are even numbers, you don't add them up. You just look at them individually. Well, if they're even, then that block has committed treason, and now you replace it with a block of the same unit just belonging to the other side, and now this block starts fighting normally for the other side. Richard III may be one of the most confrontational and bloody games that I've played from Columbia, second only to Shiloh, April 1862, where the only way to win is just to eliminate as many units on the enemy side as possible. Here you have the control of London that counts as 1 noble, but let's face it, it's really a matter of how many heads on the enemy side you manage to make roll, and how many on your side you manage to keep on their legitimate necks. Now, this is like, oh, it's a word game, it's confrontational, and what else is new? Well, I don't know, there are the games in which this works differently. When I play Rommel in the Desert, when I eliminate 10 units of my opponent by cutting off their supply lines, it's not like that is not confrontational, it just has a different feel to it. And there are days in which I feel like using the type of trickiness in order to achieve victory, and other days in which I feel more like let's go for the straightforward powerful frontal attacks that you have in Richard III. I like how the map in this game really allows you to do that. It has been designed for that. How, in fact, most areas are connected with many other areas, especially in the center of the map, and those border limits are really not too restrictive. You can still move a lot of units through them, which means that the game has great mobility. You will see armies running back and forth on the map a lot, and the enemy might be able to reinforce a battle from far than you thought and much faster than you thought. So it often happens that you have this attack that you thought it was super powerful, then there's a counterattack which is more powerful and again more sudden than you imagine, and then you have to regroup. But I like the sense of mobility, the fact that controlling a territory per se is not that important unless you're trying to prevent a certain block from entering the game, or you're trying to use a certain defensive advantage. But just getting control of an area and getting stuck there in the long term might not be the best idea. I've read online that several people have noticed how the House of York seems to have an advantage, and after my experience with the game, I have to echo that because also seeing the York player win in most of the games. However, I will not say that this game is broken in any way. I'm still going to give it a high recommendation, and I'm gonna give him high thumbs up from me because it is true, it often ends up in a certain way with your player being the winner, but there are many ways in which your player can get there. The fact that the pretender can attack from different areas each time gives great replay value. There are different strategies that your player can do, different counter strategies that the Lancaster player can attempt. Different cards, resources will create different circumstances. I just found that again there is maybe one result that the game tends to go toward, but there are many ways of getting there, and each of those are interesting. The game might end up almost always in the same way, but as you're playing it, it's fun. It is really fun. So big thumbs up for me.